Hello friends, today is a challenge video and I'm going to be trying to create a masterpiece with the Colours of the World Crayola set. As you can see, I've already put a rough outline of this deer as I'm hoping to colour it in as a continuation of the series of deers that I'm currently drawing in my sketchbook. I have to be honest and say I really haven't picked up a crayon since probably I was a little kid, so it was quite interesting to go through this swatching process as I need to figure out what it felt like to draw with crayons again and how well they went down on the piece of paper. Whenever I get new art supplies, I always find it good to swatch as you're able to see the range of colours that's provided in a set. Sometimes colours can look a lot different on the actual medium compared to what it does on the piece of paper, so it's always useful to do swatches. As I was swatching these colours, I tried to keep them in the same relative order, but in the end I ended up mixing them and just going by instinct, just because I just wanted to experiment and have that freedom. So right here you can see that I'm just sketching a rough outline of the deer's muzzle, just to try and get a feel of how I'd use the crayons and to get a flavour of how well they blend together. This process of making mini replicas of the final piece is actually quite common amongst artists as we're able to experiment without having to worry that we're going to ruin our final piece. I approach this piece how I would with any piece, starting off with the eyes as they're one of the darkest areas of the face and are often crucial to get right in order to create a realistic piece. Once I was relatively happy with the eyes, I started to work outwards from the eyes and tried to fill in the colours that I could see. One of the challenging things about working with the crayons was trying to get precise lines or really small details, as crayons are just so chunky and quite difficult to work with at times. Thankfully in this set there's a lot of shades of brown, so to get round the shading I just had to transition from the different shades of brown quite often and not rely too much on blending, as it was quite difficult to blend with crayons. For this particular section of this masterpiece, I decided to go in with the darker colours as I thought surely I can't go wrong if I just add some shadows and really get the depths right of this piece. At this stage of the piece, I was seeing a lot of blank space and it was really quite daunting for me, so I decided to not worry too much about the details at this stage and just shade as much as I could just to get rid of that white space as soon as possible. I have to admit, at this point of the piece, I was slightly concerned that it wasn't really going to turn out that great, especially when I saw so many white gaps on the paper. I really just wasn't sure how I was going to overcome those spaces, as I just really didn't think it was coming together. But as I went through the piece, I started to have more confidence in the colours that I was picking and also finding ways to blend, such as using the lighter shades to merge colours. As I moved on to work towards the antlers, I decided to keep it a lot more graphic in terms of just marking out where the darkest areas were and pressing quite firmly on the piece of paper, and then using a sharp highlight of a lighter brown to create the contrast. As I was working through my process, I also found that using the lighter shades of beige were really good in terms of blending colours, or at least attempting to blend them on the face. I then decided to go back in with the dark shade for the other side of the antlers and also shading the underside of his neck, just to really define this deer, as the shading is really what brings a piece to life and that contrast. As I'd mapped out pretty much all of the piece already, it was just time to do those final tweaks to really make this piece come to life. I definitely think I learned a lot by doing this crayon piece, and it might be something that I'll pick up again in the future, as it was definitely a really fun challenge. Crayons definitely aren't the easiest thing to work with, but overall, towards the end of this piece, I began to be happier with the outcome, as I was in doubt whether I really could make this medium work, especially with all the white gaps that I felt it left. As an artist, I think it's really important to challenge yourself and to try new mediums or try new subjects, as it's the only way that we're going to learn how to be better at art. And also, it's nice to spice things up with a little bit of change now and then. Be sure to let me know how you think I've done in this challenge, as I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. Now this deer sure was a challenge, but if you'd like to see me paint a golden deer, be sure to check out this video where I talk through my painting process.